Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us at Build with AI. I hope everyone is enjoying your summer, and we're just starting. Please share us in the chat from where are you joining us from and lunch that you're having. I know this community is so welcoming and awesome, but I just want to make you a friendly reminder of the code of conduct. We are committed to providing a friendly, safe, and welcoming environment for all, regardless of gender, sexual orientation, ability, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and religion, or lack thereof. Participate in an authentic and active way. In doing so, you contribute to the health and longevity of this community. Exercise consideration and respect in your speech and actions. Attempt collaboration before a conflict. Refrain from demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior and speech. Be mindful of your fellow participants. We continue with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we are based on traditional lands referred to as 3D6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dini, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands since time immemorial. This is the plan for today, as we are having this welcome and introduction and some banger here. Then we are going to have our first session, Integrating Gemini SDK with Android apps to add generative AI capabilities with our top Android expert, Sagar Das. Then, building intelligent mobile apps with Flutter and Gemini with my colleague, Ajiboye. Let me introduce ourselves. We are GDG Cloud Edmonton, an official chapter of Google's worldwide network of cloud enthusiasts, developers, data scientists, and engineers. Our team is integrated by Rohan Saha, NDD of 𝐉𝐞𝐭𝐩𝐚, Temi, and I, 𝐉𝐞𝐭𝐻𝐚 𝐤𝐿. From all the folks who are joining us out of Edmonton, let me tell about Edmonton. We are just a little bit north of the planet. We are located in the capital of the Canadian province of Alberta. In the picture, you can see one of our iconic landmarks like the Waterloo Bridge. We are home of the NHL hockey team Edmonton Oilers, who have made to the Stanley Cup final these last 2 seasons. Additionally, Edmonton is considered in the top 10 of cities with best pizza, where important pizza restaurants chains were founded like Boston Pizza, Famoso, etc. And lastly, we are north enough to witness the stunning northern lights. And now the real fun starts here with our first session, Integrating Gemini SDK with Android apps to add generative AI capabilities, with our top Android expert, Sagar Das, who is a staff Android engineer who has building apps for 11 years now. He's also a Google developer expert in Android and co-organizer for our sibling chapter, Google Developers Group at Boston, and enjoys educating for the mobile dev community. Please receive and welcome Sagars with claps in the chat. Hey! Hey, Sagar, how is your day going? How is everything in Boston so far?
Going great so far, Vanya. And I love the way how you introduced your city and your chapter. I wish that more chapters did that. I learned a tons about Edmonton.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sagar. I do this because when I'm going to conferences, many people they wonder where is Edmonton. So that's why I do that. Thank you so much. And now the stage is all yours. See you in a
Uh,
bit.
okay. All right. I think you have to make me a presenter now because I don't see the share screen. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to present my entire screen because we will be doing a little bit of back and forth switching between browser and my slides and the IDE. So what we're gonna do is let's start with the slides first. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from whichever part of the world you are joining from. I'm Sagar. I'm a staff Android engineer working at 𝐉𝐞𝐭𝐩𝐚 Smart Home. In case you're curious, what does 𝐉𝐿 do for like their business? So we are a direct competitors of Amazon, Alexa, and other smart home offerings. So we have got an entire suite of products like smart doorbell locks, smart doorbell cameras, and then garage door locks, door window sensors, thermostats. And I work in the app development team, which is in charge of coordinating all of those smart home devices through a neat little Android app. I'm also a Google developer expert for Android. So what that means is I love talking with the community. I live in Boston, which is a very unique place. You know, in Boston, you can always find anyone who has like maybe like less than 1 year experience or a fresh grad in college to someone who is like extremely expert in their domain. I feel like this is the city of intellectuals. So it's definitely a great place to live in if you ever want to move to a certain place in US. And yeah, I'm a public speaker. Outside of work, I enjoy like educating the community and then interacting with anyone and then mentoring through LinkedIn and then all of those things. Now, one of the common questions which I always get asked, and probably like any other AI evangelists at this point of time have already faced this question, is will AI replace Android developers or iOS developers and or insert your own technology? Now, before I answer the question, I always ask the person who asked this question to do a thought experiment about how the civilization has progressed till now. Now, before this AI and computer revolution, the biggest revolution which was used in the society was the industrial revolution, which happened somewhere roughly around like 150 to 200 years ago. And back then, people had the same concern: will machine and factories replace humans? Did they? The answer is no. Humans adopted themselves. They learned those skills, how to operate those machines. Today as well, even if you see factories with all of those assembly floors and everything, packing up stuff and everything, if you watch those videos in YouTube, there would still be humans making sure that the machines are working in the proper order. So human beings always adopt to any sort of new tools that is being provided in the society. So AI is nothing more than just a tool which you can leverage for all of your day-to-day business tasks or personal tasks and other domains. So I always advise like start treating AI as your assistant and not as a replacement. This particular mindset will allow you to think in the proper direction rather than thinking that, oh, AI is like creating negative impacts in the society or something. I had this interesting conversation with my coworkers few weeks ago. Like, perhaps this generation right now alive is behaving the same way boomers used to behave when television was around, and or maybe the internet was around, and the next generation would be coming up and adopting AI without questioning it. That was an interesting analogy. um, I feel like that was the case when like calculator was also created in the society, and then people were hesitant of like, or do I have to let go of my mental calculation models and I have to rely on a machine? So all of those discussions have been around for age long, but with every progress in humankind, we always face a different kind of tool which we have to adapt ourselves and learn in order to stay relevant in our lives. Now, before this whole revolution of generative AI, Google has been doing a lot of work in the AI space. Now, before the fancy term called generative AI, the terms which was used was analytical and predictive AI. One of the first applications of predictive and analytical AI was Google Maps, which was launched around roughly 15 to 16 years ago. And it revolutionized how the way we navigate around the world. And there are other use cases as well, which were not apparent to day-to-day average consumers, like using AI for field of like medical science and biology, more of like those protein sequence and all of those researches and finding complicated compounds and all of those things. So, having said that, and with the times in which we are living in, if someone asks what is the next big skill to build, and that would be prompt engineering. Because we are living in an interesting time when we are interacting with a generative AI, which is nothing but a generative bot, and it relies on English or other human understandable language. Now, with front end programming or like back end programming, until now we had these concepts like high level or low level programming languages, like Python and Java, and then in order to be developers you have to learn one of these front end languages, and there was less importance on your normal language that you use, which is which can be understand by humans. Now, with this rise of generative AI, the focus is gradually shifting on how we can enable people to create applications or experiences through the normal language that they are using in their day to day communication. And that's why you see this whole new genre of coding erupting in society that's called vibe coding. It's more of like you figure out and interact with AI and build your applications from scratch. So that's definitely that's nothing but like prompt engineering disguised in like fancy words. Now it's the practice of crafting text instructions to guide AI models to generate your desired output. Now, irrespective of you using Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever, all of those input models that is being provided to those AI bots rely on this technique of prompt engineering. Now, underneath this Gemini or ChatGPT, we have got a layer of LLM sitting. Now, at this point of time, I'm pretty sure everyone knows LLM stands for large language model. So what they essentially do is they take up a sentence or a sequence of input. Now, that sequence of input could be like images, videos, or texts, and break them into like small pieces called as tokens. Now, if it is an English statement or like a text in any language like Spanish, French, or Hindi, they break up into words. Now, those individual words are considered tokens. If it is an image or a video, they first break those videos into frames as individual images, and then they break up those entire array of images into smaller cluster of pixels, like 4 cross 4 or 5 cross 5, and then they try to piece together what does this particular word mean in isolation. So they analyze these tokens and then they use their magic underneath to predict what the next sequence of operation would look like. Whether it is like, so for here, the example is like the cat sat on this is the input, and they are breaking up into individual tokens. And then the most likely word is suggested like mat, rug, or chair. And similar analogy can also be extended to like images or videos. So LLMs are extremely capable of generating knowledge and reasoning aspects of problem statements. That's why they became instantly popular ever since ChatGPT was launched 2022. Because most of our jobs in the society are like knowledge-based jobs or reasoning-based jobs, and that's why people just become like very much early adopters of this particular technology. So the technical term for supporting different kind of inputs for any kind of generative AI model is called multimodality. That means that an AI model can support text, image, or video. Now, at the heart of prompt engineering lies prompt design, and that helps you craft those individual words or sentences that the LLM or the generative AI model is going to make sense and then provide you your desired output. So prompts are essentially instructions that allows LLM to apply those rules, automate processes, and then ensure specific qualities, and then provide you the desired output. Now, there is this whole discipline of prompt engineering study that is being led by different PhD and researchers, and then definitely much more capable people than me in that particular domain. So if you want to dig like deep into prompt engineering guidelines from PhDs and research scientists, definitely go ahead and do a simple Google search, and you would be getting all of these information. But from our standpoint, like on our day-to-day basis, like if you want to use generative AI for coding, or like creating your next vacation plan, or like asking some of the personal questions, there are a few things which we can keep in mind, and these serves as guideline. Like keep your prompt engineering or those individual instructions clear and specific, provide a context, and then provide a task oriented approach, and then iterate over by providing examples and references. Now, all of these we will be applying in a moment while we take a look at the code underneath and how to integrate Gemini with an Android app. Yeah, this slide basically talks the same thing, like how you can provide a bunch of input with multimodal inputs, and then iterate over it, and then yeah, provide desired response. There are different prompt engineering techniques. The simple ones are like zero shot prompt, one shot prompt, few shot prompt, depending upon like how you structure your sentences. So in the earlier slide, I talked about like how Google has been using AI in one of its form or other form ever since like the advent of Google Maps. Now, all of this generative AI revolution started from like 2017 when Google released its public model called Transformer, upon which BERT was built, upon which AlphaFold, T5, Lambda, Palm, and then now from like when I say now, back in 2023, Google released a project code name called Bard, and then now it's Gemini. And then, of course, between 2023 and 2025, a lot more has happened. We have now got agentic AI, and then people are keeping on building layer upon layer to those existing LLM models. Now, having that being said, let's move along to like using Android and AI components. Now, why does AI or generative AI in general matters for AI development or Android development? Now, the answer is applicable for any kind of technology that you are using. It helps you a lot of in tasks like auto completing stuff, refactoring stuff, identifying performance bottlenecks in your code, or like building user experiences which are accessible to anyone, or like you want to automate the repetition of certain tasks and all of those things. Now, folks who are not familiar, Android is the premier mobile operating system based on Linux, so it's open source. Now, outside of the States, Android is massive. I'm from India originally, so India and parts of like other parts of Asia and parts of Europe as well, Android has a massive presence compared to iOS. Here in the States, everyone uses iPhone. iOS is more dominant than Android, but outside of the States, Android just occupies a big chunk of the market share. Now, pick up any Android app in the Play Store. It is divided into four components that it has underneath the logic or the code. So the names of those components are activity, service, content provider, and broadcast receiver. Now, for the purposes of this talk, we would just be focusing on activity because we would be doing a hands-on exercise right now, seeing from scratch how to build a sample app and how to integrate Gemini API to it. Now, in simple terms, activity is a fundamental unit or a screen of any app that allows user interaction. So consider a music app or an email app, the login screen, the settings page, or in the music app, you can see those individual cards and the music components where a user can interact and expect a visual response from the input operation. Now, the official IDE which we use for Android app development is called Android Studio. Now, if you go to Google and just type Android Studio, you would be getting the first link as download Android Studio and app tools. If you visit there, you would be seeing a couple of flavors associated with the Android Studio. Now, over here, you would be seeing, let's see, because there are like stable flavor as well as preview release. Yeah, there we go. So they have created now tabs. Now in the download window, you would be seeing the most stable version of the ID, but in the preview release, you would be seeing Canary and then release candidate. So something to keep in mind is like release candidate builds and Canary ID builds have bleeding edge technology, but they are not necessarily stable. So expect crashes if you are using a Canary build or a release candidate. So my advice is always stick to the stable. And the official language that we use for Android app development is Kotlin, which is kind of like a sister language to Java. Ever since 2017, Google advocated usage of Kotlin for building Android apps, and the community has never looked back ever since because it's much more simpler in syntax from Java. It reduces boilerplate code, and it comes with like other neat features of programming, which we would be taking a look in a while. All right, so that was a lot of theory. Now let's get on to the hands-on practice. Now, the first thing which we need to do for before we integrate a Gemini API AI model to our Android app would be to get an API key, as with like other services, like if you are using um, AWS or like cloud services, you definitely need an API key for it. So for that, we need to visit to aistudio.google.com. And then over here, you would be seeing an option called Get API Key. You click on that. You click on Create API Key. It will ask you a bunch of questions, and then you fill it up, and then you would be getting an API key. I have already created an API key, so I will not be doing it again. One neat thing over here is if you click on View Status, you can see on the days when the AI server was down or probably busy, because sometimes using a API would be hit or a miss depending upon the server load. Sometimes it takes forever to get responses. Sometimes the responses are instant. This view tells us like when was the last time it was out, and yeah, see. So on June 11th or something, there was full outage, and today there has been no outages. Now, in the main page of AI Studio, you can do a bunch of interactions just like you do in the main page of ChatGPT or main page of Gemini. So this is a fully capable input window for your AI model with some additional bells and whistles. Now that additional bells and whistles comes from on the side over here. Let's see if I can move it over here. There we go. Okay. So over here, you can select the model that you are running. There are different kinds of AI models backed up in Gemini. So the recent one is 2.5 Pro, Flash, and Lite. And each of these models have different types of tasks that they have been programmed for and different pricing requirements. And then we have got temperature and then media resolution, thinking mode, and a bunch of bells and whistles. So something that we use on a day-to-day basis uh, when we are integrating AI models in the app is temperature. Now, what is temperature? Temperature is nothing but the degree of randomness or the confidence with which your AI model should reply with. That sounds a little bit technical when I describe it, but it would be apparent when we experiment in our app. So now over here in this window, you can interact with literally anything. Just say hi, and then it would be taking some time and responding. Now, since this is much more attached to a bunch of options. That's why it takes about a little more time than your regular Gemini window. So here you see thoughts and everything, and then it provides you responses. Now let's see how we can integrate it to our Android app. So let's switch back to the slides. Okay. So here it says like go to file and new project. Okay, so we can see that in live in our IDE. Okay, so once you have downloaded Android IDE, you would want to go to file, go to new, and click on new project. Now inside new project, you would be seeing this template called Gemini API Starter. You click on next. You give an application name, a package name, and then minimum SDK is the minimum Android OS flavor that you want to select, and keep the build configuration language as Kotlin DSL. Click on next, and this is where we would be entering the API key which we generated in the previous step in the website. Once that is done and you click on next, your project gets created. Now over here, I have created the project. So I will, to save some time, so I will not be doing it again. But once you create the project, you would be seeing project structure, something similar to this. Now we can take some time to understand the structure of an Android app project. Now that's especially helpful if you are like just a beginner in Android app and you are curious about what happens behind the scenes. So here we go. So the entire Android app project is divided into like two views by default. So one is the app view and then is the Gradle view. Now the Gradle view is the build system. A build system is responsible in packaging all of those components. Like earlier we talked about activities, service provider, and all of those individual screens into one package called APK, which is generated and uploaded to Play Store. And then the end user downloads it from Play Store and installs it in their app. The build file is also responsible for adding all of those library dependencies. Now we are very much interested in integrating Gemini API. So over here, we can take a look at what sort of libraries that is being added. So inside build.gradle.kts file, which is for module app, you would be seeing a bunch of dependencies which is added. And over here, it says libraries.generative AI. If I do a command B on it, it takes me to another file called libs.versions.toml file. And once you go over there, it gives you the complete address of the library which is being used. com.google.ai client, and then generative AI. This much of information is enough to get you started. Other information in the build or Gradle file is pretty much intuitive, like the minimum SDK, which is selected while creating the project, and the package name, and all of those things. Now let's take a look at the main ingredients of the Android app project. That's the app module. So over here, you would see again subfolders. A manifest is more of like a configuration tool, which allows you to list out those individual components. Over here, we have got one screen app, which is the main activity. And then we have got the Kotlin and Java folder, which has a bunch of files inside it, which we will be taking a look in a moment. So these are like unit testing folders. And then we have got a last one. The last folder which we have got is the res folder, or the resources folder. And this just holds all of the images that you want to attach it in your app. And some additional XML files like strings and then colors. Then we have also other color files which we use for like theming kind of objectives in your app, like providing color to those layouts of the app, and then type deals with typography, the font, and making it bold and italic and all of those things. Okay, now we want to run our Android app. So in order to do it, you either need an actual physical phone. I have got my physical phone over here. But if you do not have access to an Android phone, so no worries for that, because Android Studio comes bundled with an emulator. So you can create a virtual device. So you can go to device manager and then click on this plus button. It says create virtual device. And then over here, you would see a bunch of pre-configured settings for an emulator. Like if you want Pixel 9 Pro, select that, click on next. It shows you the dimensions, and then you can allocate memory and the storage space and how much do you want for cache, a lot of options. And then you click on finish, it creates the virtual device. But I have my phone already connected to my laptop, so I'm gonna go to running devices option over here and then click on this plus button, and then it shows the connected devices. So I'm going to click on Pixel 8, and right now it's going to mirror my phone. Now, once it does that, let's click on run, and let's wait for the app to show up. So here's a very basic app which has been created or already included in the Gemini API starter template, which we use to create this project. So pretty much simple. It has got two images. It has got an input window, and it has got a button. And once you click on the button, it makes some call to Gemini API in the backend and then provides you the response. Now, this response is a little bit slower since today afternoon. I was trying this before our talk. So you see, it took a couple of seconds. It took like nearly 3 to 4 seconds. Usually it's like in milliseconds, but sometimes, as I said, like you cannot predict server response. So yeah, the prompt was provide a recipe for the baked goods in the image. So this is multimodal in action, like it takes into consideration the text as well as the images and then provides you a recipe. You can also ask like any questions to it. It does not have to be um, related to those images. So for example, how many continents are there in the world? And then it cleans up the responses, and then yeah, it provides you the answer. Okay, so now let's dig into the code, where and how exactly the magic is happening. Before we do that, let's take a quick look at the slides if we missed anything. Okay, so we created the project, we entered the API. Perfect. Okay, so this is more of like an overview of the project. So every Android project definitely follows some architecture patterns, just like any other technology. So we have got MVP, model view presenter, used in the past. Right now, most of the community uses MVVM architecture pattern, which stands for model, view, and view model. Now over here in the sample project as well, if you take a look at the folders, you would be seeing certain things matching or sounding similar. So we have got a view model, and then we have got a baking screen. Now this baking screen is responsible for creating the UI elements, which is part of the view layer of MVVM. And view model is responsible for all of the business logic, where we are making all of those uh, internet calls or API calls or whatever. Now, if you are someone like pretty much new to a code base, Android code base, and someone is asking you to find me where exactly the API call is happening when you click on the go button, you can definitely spend hours of time going through multiple files to find out. But there is a quick way how you can find out, and that's using a built-in tool in Android Studio called Toggle Layout Inspector. So once you have your app running, you click on this small window over here, or the small button which says Toggle Layout Inspector. You click on that, and then let's wait for the inspector to get attached to it. Okay, so now it's attached. Now our objective would be to find out what is the code behind for the go button. So for that, let's see what we can do. Okay, so there is an option called toggle deep inspect. So I'm gonna enable that. And then you see how when I hover my cursor over individual elements, how individual elements are getting highlighted. So that means we can click on any of those elements and inspect what is going on. So just the idea is like as similar to like the developer tools you use in Google Chrome in order to inspect certain elements. So you click on Go, and then over here in the bottom window, it tells you what are the attributes, and it shows you the exact screen and the line in which it is implemented. So I will click on this, and over here the window got opened. So I'm going to minimize this. Now this is where having a large monitor comes in handy. Right now I don't have access to a large monitor, so I'm just using my small laptop screen. But usually if you want to have layout inspector running and then UI window running and code window running, so it's definitely better to use a large monitor. So once I clicked on this baking screen, it took me to the exact line where this has been implemented. And over here, you see, it says text is Go inside a parent element called button. Now, if let's minimize all of these things so that it's easier. Okay, so we have got a Go button, and then over here the text is Go, and then similarly, if you explore other elements of this file, you would be seeing other elements of UI, pretty much intuitive to the stuff which you would be seeing displayed over here. So images for obviously displaying images, and text for text, and all of those things. Now, I am interested to find out how to use that Gemini API which we just added. So we found the code for Go, and then over here, this is the button. And then inside this, we have an on-click property, which if you see, it takes the bitmap, which is the images, and then sends it to the view model, which is in charge of the business logic or the API calls that you are making. So the shortcut for navigating to any piece of code in Android Studio or any IntelliJ based IDE is Command B or Control B, depending upon Mac or Windows. Once you do that, it will take you inside view model, and then you can see we have a function called send prompt, and then over here we are taking the bitmap and the prompt, which is a string, the text over here, and then bitmap is the images, combining it, and then just doing generative model dot generate content. So let's see how we are building this generative model. Now we're gonna do Command B. Now it takes me to this line over here. So all of this is created, is being fetched from the Gemini API library itself. You can do Command B and read the source code. Generative model has a bunch of parameters that can be configured. But for purposes of this talk, we would be using some of the basic parameters like the model name, the API key. Something to keep in mind, and which is very important: never expose your API key like I have done right now. Since this is for demo purposes, it makes my life easier. So I have just mentioned something like this directly in a string. But if you're working on a production app, you should definitely take care of like proper encryption technique, and then creating a separate file for your API key, and building that mechanism of providing that encrypted API key inside this parameter. But model name takes up the actual model which is available on the Gemini servers. Now you can always verify that from the AI Studio. So they have got 2.5 Pro, 2.5 Flash, they've got Gemma. I'm using here 2.5 Flash. You can change it and then experiment what is going on. Now over here, we have some additional config as well. Now this is unused. Now this is where we can use all of those fancy bells and whistles, which we talked about earlier. And I mentioned about temperature. Now temperature is something which you would come across used a lot by all of those AI scientists or anyone who is using AI in their apps. But as I said earlier, it controls the degree of randomness. So what that means is a lower temperature. Now a temperature can be like from 0 to 1 plus. Lower temperature can be between like 0 to 0.5 or something. that is when the model will become more deterministic and focused. Like it will not go wild in its thinking strategies. For example, if you are building an app that is focused on math, code, or summary, you want to build like more logic oriented discussions, then you should keep always a lower temperature. So that's why if you observe, like for the model by default, the temperature would be I have modified it. By default, the temperature would be actually on a lower kind of setting. So, and then accordingly, if you want to increase your temperature, it balances between logic or coherence with creativity. For example, if you are building like for some like general writing, email apps, and chat kind of apps, keep like a medium temperature. And high temperature is recommended if you want your model to provide much more random, creative, and diverse response. For example, like writing poetry or writing stories or brainstorm. Like for example, you ask your model to entertain yourself, like by telling a joke. Now joke can be more funnier if there is a degree of wildness introduced to it. So you ask your model to go wild and generate out of this world response or kind of thing, which we call it as creative response. That is where you are supposed to increase your temperature. Now we can experiment that probably. Now it depends upon, from time to time we can never say like how a temperature might affect your particular style of um, querying the model, but we can give it a go. So for example, let's see, we're going to modify this generative model by providing config. So this is a property called generation config, and I'm gonna add this config. Now let's rerun the app. Okay, so let's experiment. So for now the temperature is low, which means it is more logic oriented. So let's say write a story in maybe 3 lines, and we'll see how its creativity goes. Like a vibrant cupcake crowned with cherry. Also, it took the images into context, but that's fine. Vibrant cupcake crowned with cherry and a blah 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 sprinkle stood proudly. Its creamy frosting. One glance was everything. Now let's compare by increasing the temperature, and let's see what kind of literature or prose that we are getting out of the model. So I'm gonna change the temperature to, let's say, 1.5, and then rerun that. And then we're gonna provide the same prompt. Write a story in 3 lines. Click on go. Sprinkle of joy, swirl of white, topped with cherry. Okay, so now you see the difference, like how it sounds more poetic, less words, more poetic. If the temperature is less, then it is thinking that you want more logic in your responses. That's why it took like a descriptive route. There were more number of words, there were more lines. No, lines was less, but more number of words. Um, but this time, since we increased the temperature, it took a more creative route, and it just assumes that you would be understanding a bit more poetic kind of literature. So yeah, I mean, it's up to you how you experiment. It's the type of app that you are building. We at Vivint, we always use like logic based models because we deal with security. We cannot risk being creative with security. So it depends upon your use case. Okay, having said that, let's take a look at the slides. I think we discussed this already. Like MVVM stands for model, view, and view model. Model stores the data. So in our sample project, we do not have a model. Now, it could look like after getting the generative AI responses, you want to save it in a PDF file or save it in a database and all of those actions. View displays the screen, the actual UI components, and view model handles the user input and manages the data. The last portion of this talk is to understand like what exactly is being done when we are sending the prompt, and why do we have to do this mumbo jumbo over here instead of just calling generative model dot generate content. Why do we do a view model scope dot launch dispatches dot io? So I'm curious, like what is all of this about? So before we understand what those view model scope launch or dispatches are, good thing for us would be to understand what are the different types of operations that we perform in any kind of computing or software scenario. So the first one is synchronous operation. So what does synchronous operation means? So anytime you launch your Android app, it is allocated only one thread to it, and that is called the UI thread. So anytime you are creating these tasks, like in our sample app, the first task would be to display those images. Second task would be to probably click on go button, and it makes those network API calls. And the third would be to display in the output text window. Now, anytime you are using synchronous programming, it takes those operations in a linear format, like one after the other. First task, second task, and second the third task. So once the first task is completed, only then second task would be allowed to perform. But we oftentimes needs like concurrent execution, so that's why we deal with asynchronous operation. So what that means is anytime you create these parallel processing kind of tasks or concurrent tasks, it does not block the main thread, and it allows parallel things to happen at the same time. Now by that I mean, so when I click on go, you see the spinner button happening, spinning. So that was the UI component, which is displayed to the user. But also in the background, we are making the network call, and that is where asynchronous operations are happening. Now, over here, let's go back to the slides. Okay. Now, something to keep in mind is both sync and async operations are leveraging a single thread, which on the other side of the coin is multi-threading. So multi-threading is different from asynchronous programming because it uses multiple threads that can be executed in multiple CPU cores in parallel. And that is why you would oftentimes hear developers or engineers confuse between the terms concurrent execution and parallel execution. Both of them are not the same, they're different. When it comes to multi-threading, it's parallel execution because we are using individual hardware CPU cores in order to manage those threads and perform those operations in parallel. But in asynchronous programming, it just uses one thread and one core, but it applies those concurrent processing techniques within that same thread. So, from a developer standpoint, using multi-threading techniques are always expensive because you have to individually switch between CPU cores, and there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be required in order to use multi-threading techniques. So in order to avoid those, we always use asynchronous techniques. Now for Kotlin, we use coroutines, and that is what this particular block is all about, like view model scope dot launch. Anytime you see dot launch in Android code, rest assured that it is a coroutine, which means that you are about to perform certain kind of asynchronous operation. Now, coroutines also allows us to select the exact thread which you want to perform, because as I said, the default thread is the UI thread, which is reserved only for UI operations. For your network operations and other things, you can select any of these threads like IO, default, main, or unconfined. Usually we use the IO or input output channel or input output thread for network. I guess that was it from a hands-on Android Studio perspective. So this serves more of like a reminder of like how generative AI is already being adopted across multiple domains in the industry. like be it any sectors or industry, you name it, you would definitely see generative AI being used in it. Media and entertainment industry is definitely one of those industries which are early adopters of any kind of new technology out there. When virtual reality was still new to the world, media and entertainment industry was the first one to use it. Same with generative AI. So anytime you want to see like the usage of any emerging technology, keep an eye out on how media and entertainment industry is being used. Um,
Hey, Sagar, sorry to interrupt. Would you mind to repeat again your last slide? It because I heard some distortion or there was like a delay in the
okay,
transmission.
gotcha.
More
Yeah,
than that. Thank
yeah,
you.
no problem. Yeah, I was saying that media and entertainment industry is always the first industry which adopts any kind of emerging technology. Now, be it like virtual reality or augmented reality or like three-dimensional viewing or 3D movies or whatever, media and entertainment industry will always be the first one to adopt it. Like same for like AI kind of thing, like recommendation engines, which were the precursor of generative AI, was used by Netflix almost like a decade ago, like 10 years ago. So anytime you want to see the usage of emerging technologies, you should always keep an eye out on how it is being used in media and entertainment industry. um, so generative AI is also being adopted in cross-platform, like cross-platform roles in any kind of industry, like be it analyst, customer service, or like developers, and then researchers. They're finding ways how you can accelerate your workflow, irrespective of like which domain you are working on. One last reference would be for here for this group would be to refer to the official Google Gemini cookbook. They provide a lot of sample code and all of those new additions to models and how you can use those parameters to fine tune your models and everything. And then you can also go to Android Studio website and then read more about like Gemini template and how these kind of advancements are being made. With that being said, feel free to be touch in LinkedIn. So feel free to add me in LinkedIn and then follow me in Medium. I spend my time writing performance engineering and AI integration vlogs. And if you get the time, do check out Boston Android channel, which is the official channel for GDG Boston Android, where we have got videos on more of like in-depth Android discussions and building Android apps in Compose and all of those things. So thanks so much.
Hey, please give a huge clap to Sagar. Thank you so much for this insightful session. I just have a question for you, Sagar. And now you know it's been trending about the vibe coding. I was wondering, have you compared the performances between vibe coding for Android and also using Gemini? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. Yes, I have done that. Now, when it comes to Vibe coding, it may not necessarily be up to date with the libraries which is being provided by Google for Android. For example, if you wanna implement the latest libraries for navigation, the latest library which is offered by Google right now is Navigation 3 library. But if you go for like a vibe coding approach and you just ask your AI to build um, an app from scratch, it would be using Navigation 2 library. So vibe coding is definitely, in my opinion, good for like beginners who are just getting their feet wet and then want to try out how app development looks like, or like any platform kind of development looks like. But if you want to like learn about the new libraries which is being integrated, you have to do some of like manual research and then fine tune the code which is generated from the vibe coding.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Sagar, for clarifying this. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. And I hope you're enjoying the summer there in Boston. And I hope you can enjoy a good slushy or ice cream in the cold weather there.
For
Thank
sure.
you, Sagar.
Thank you, Anya.
Hey! Now it's time to pass along the session with one moment. Now it's time for our next session with my friend Temitope Ajiboye, building intelligent mobile apps with Flutter and Gemini. Temi is a senior mobile developer and technical lead specializing in Flutter, with extensive experience in crafting scalable web apps and Windows services. As the founder of Code Clan Nigeria and a community driven advocate, he bridges mentorship in real world development. Currently based in Canada, Temi builds Flutter solutions, contributes open source, and shares his expertise through courses, videos, and speaking engagement. Please welcome with a huge clap to my friend Temi. Hey!
Hello. Hi.
Hi Temi, how is your summer going on?
Uh yeah, I think it's pretty hot today. We've got a heat warning or something.
Oh my god, I don't think
Yeah.
it's hot enough for me. But tell us a little bit about your Flutter development bootcamp. Which
Yeah.
projects are you working on, and how many students have you been mentoring there?
Yeah, so earlier this year I created like a platform, Compile Camp, uh compilecamp.com. So it's supposed to be like a bootcamp platform. But we started with a Flutter bootcamp. It's to help people transition into Flutter development. So yeah, we opened a limited registration for 100 people, and then we had to open more spaces to 50 more people, and so we had 150 people enroll. And yeah, so the format of the boot camp is in weeks. It's supposed to be an 8-week boot camp. With every week we have projects, and apart from we have courses that you can look through, very detailed ones. And then we at the end of each week you have projects that you follow through. And the goal is that at the end of 8 weeks, you will have enough project in your portfolio to um, go to the job market. And also the way I learn is by doing. So it's not just by looking at the course and stuff. So yeah, you learn what is a widget, you apply it, code, and you have projects to at the end of the bootcamp. And also, you have like a final project where you collaborate with other people to build something and you showcase it as well. So, yeah, that's a bit of Compile Camp. And oh, yeah, I have access.
Yeah, now the stage is all yours, Temi. See you in a bit.
Hey, thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my entire screen and welcome everybody to my session. And I want to introduce you to building intelligent mobile apps with Flutter. So I assume that we know what Flutter is. And so Flutter is like a mobile framework for building mobile apps. And it's not just mobile apps, cross-platform apps. So our previous speaker talked about Android, but that's for Android. But with Flutter, you can build ones and compile on mobile, on web, on Linux, on Mac OS, on your desktop, even on your watch, um, even uses for IoT tools as well. So today we just touch point with how you can integrate Gemini into your mobile apps to make it more intelligent and stuff. Or else the world is going to leave you behind. So everybody's talking about AI now. So you gotta follow where the money is at. Okay, so me, my name is Temitope Ajiboye. You can call me Temi. I'm a technical lead at Jester IS in Montreal, also senior Flutter development, and I've been doing community work for over 5 years now, from Nigeria, now in Canada. I'm also a co-organizer of this chapter, GDG Edmonton. And yeah, so you can check out compilecamp.com in your free time. I think after the Florida bootcamp, we'll have some other bootcamps in future. Yeah, so what's on our agenda today? We are going to look at why do you want AI in your mobile app, and then we touch base into an overview of Gemini. And we will talk about Firebase AI logic because it's going to help us with the capabilities that you need for Gemini and Vertex AI if you want. And then we'll talk about tool calling concept, which is really important. It's like an advanced way of using Gemini. And I'm going to show you demos of multiple apps that I've compiled. Maybe talk about architecture and integration. Then we talk about best practices. And then I'd love to hear your questions, and we do a quick Q&A if you have questions for me. Okay, so I'll do the slides and then show you how it works. Again, it's my style of doing bootcamp. I explain the concept, and yeah, you do a project with it. So before I get started, I have a repository. So if you want to follow the code, I made it open source. So if you go to github.com, my profile, let me make this big a bit. So you see. Okay. And you go to my repository here.
Sorry, Temi, are you sharing your slides? I'm just checking out if you're sharing your slides and also
yeah,
the
let me
links.
share.
No worries.
Yeah, I thought I should. Okay, let's share again. So yeah, if you go to this repository, you will be able to follow my code. Let me just post that in the chat. And I pushed it like 41 minutes ago. Everything we are going to talk about here is in this repository, so you can grab it, you can clone, and use it to make a start point of your project. And yeah, so this is really a showcase of the capabilities that I'm going to talk today. As you can see, I'm running this on a web. It also shows you that Flutter can be used to build web apps. And today I have all these interactive demos, and we go into it a bit into it. So we have an AI chat. So let's say you want to add conversation.
Sorry again, Temi, to interrupt, but the screen here shows black.
Oh.
It doesn't show anything.
Oh my God. What is going on?
Sorry for the technical trouble.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Share screen. Share entire screen. Can you see it now?
Yeah, now we can see it. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah. So this is a page for this is literally what is in this repository, and it contains all the way you can add the power of AI to your apps. So, for example, you want to have an AI chat. Yeah, this basic stuff. Like you have ChatGPT, but the trick here is to have it aware of um, the functionalities of your app. So we go into it a bit. We have an example as a smart suggestion as well. You have a text summary. There is maybe you have a content in your app, and you can have the user click on a button to summarize the text. Or let's say you're building like a notes app, for example. User enters some notes, and then they can just have, you can just give them the capability to summarize the things in the notes. A little bit of convenience here and there for your users. Or you're in a chat and you build a chat app, you have a chat functionality in your app. You can add a bit of translations in your app as well. It detects translations, you translate from a language to the other. Yeah, so sentiment analysis, they enter a text, you want to display some kind of mood to the user, you want to get the sentiment behind a text, the functionality is there. You have a smart form. Yeah, so autocomplete, this is basic stuff, but I don't assume that you use autocomplete for your personal information. But yeah, there are some instances where you have forms that users can just enter stuff, and it does a tool call to your database to bring out some of the information I fill up here. That's part of it as well. A QA assistant. Then we talk about functional calling and grounding. Let's see. Okay, do you see my slide?
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it should be better now. Okay, so why AI in your mobile apps? You want to enhance user experience with natural interactions, and you want to make things easy for your users. You want them to, yeah, so there's a trick to making your user stay on your mobile app. Now we have lots of app. You probably have lots of app in your phone, but you know the ones that you open every now and then. It could be your social app, it could be Blue Sky, it could be Facebook, it could be whatever app that you open the most. There's a reason why you are hooked to your to that app. There's some apps that you downloaded that you only opened once and you never opened it again. And it could be that the app is just boring and there's nothing much to do. But with the advent of AI, you could enhance the user experience, have some interactions. Like I was using an app and yeah, they allowed me to change the theme by just talking. Yeah, it looked cool. I spent a bit of time there. They upsell something to me. I almost paid because of that interaction. It was pretty good. So if you're looking at it from a point of building, yeah, these are some of the little enhancements you can use, you can add to your apps. Yeah, we talk about automated suggestions, personalizations, and then you could have capabilities that are multimodal. So far, our showcase will be text, but the previous speaker talked about images, some of the things you can do. So now let's go ahead into setting up Firebase, setting up Gemini in our mobile app. And then we talk about Gemini via Firebase AI logic. So let me bring in a second screen. And then we go to Firebase. So you probably have heard of Firebase. Firebase has this suite of things that allows you to build full stack app. For example, they have a database. They have Google Analytics in there. So it's just like a collection of things that makes you build like a full stack app. And good thing is Firebase has included Gemini as part of the offerings that you can use, and it's pretty easy to set up. So if you want to, let me switch my account here. You create an account in Firebase, and it's easy as clicking on create a Firebase account. Let's give it some name. I just say test Gemini. I'm going to uncheck this one. We continue. So AI assistance for your Firebase project. And this allows you to, if you want to chat with Gemini inside your Firebase project to help you with your development process. This won't enable Gemini in your app. It's just for your Firebase project. And then continue, same like you have Google Analytics here. We'll uncheck this one because we don't want to. So it's going to take a bit of minute to bootstrap a Firebase account for you. And we're going to wait a bit to finish up. Oh, yeah, it's ready. And we continue. Now it takes us to a console of our project, and you can see our project here. You can get started by adding Firebase to your app. So there's a Flutter option here. We can click on Flutter and you click on next. So this makes it easy for you to actually bootstrap Firebase to your app. We just install Firebase CLI. You can see the link to install it. You choose the environment you are using. For me, I have Mac. So I just install via this script or a binary or npm, whichever works for you. And then you do Firebase login. Firebase login will authenticate you to your Firebase account. And you can test the CLI by just checking your list of projects. If you can see your list of Firebase projects, you'll be able to go ahead with it. And if you have, of course, you have Flutter. That's why you want to add this stuff to it. Okay, so we click on next. Now, to add all these configurations to your Flutter project, you can use Flutter Fire CLI. So let me show you a bit how it works. So let's use in my console here. Let me just do Flutter Fire configure. So I already configured it here, but if I choose no, it's going to fetch all my available Firebase projects. And I'm going to choose my project. And for this account I'm using, It's Gemini Showcase. I hit enter, and remember I told you Flutter is multi-platform. So I select Android, iOS. For now, I don't want macOS, I don't want Windows, I just want Android, iOS, and web. And I hit enter. So it will create like a Firebase option file for you. So I just go ahead and override, and it registers your app to your Firebase account based on the app ID. Now it's done. You have the capability of Firebase inside your app. Now, the next thing you need to do is, after you added all this stuff, if you come down here, we see AI, and then there is an option called AI logic here. So you click on that. All you need here is to click on Get Started. Click on Get Started. It shows you Gemini Developer API. It's at no cost for you for some of the things you are going to be doing. And you can experiment with model and prompts. You can get code snippet from Google AI Studio. Also, if you want to use Vertex, this is enterprise stuff. So just click on Get Started with this API, and you'll be able to enable it. So it will create an API key for you and enable the requirement stuff. So that's more like it. You don't need all this stuff. You've already done that. And boom, we are good to go. And now we have AI logic enabled in your Flutter app. Let me switch account to my default one that I added to that demo. And let's see. Okay, so this is the Gemini Showcase. Let's go to the AI logic. So these are the apps that we've added, and you can enable AI monitoring. But I think it's available for Vertex AI. Okay, so that's how to configure Gemini. So you don't really need this number 2 for what we are about to do. We don't need an API key because we use Flutterfire to bootstrap it. And in 5 minutes, you have something, you have Gemini available in your app. And that's the this one. So now let's go into a bit of code and see how to use this stuff. Now, if you're a Flutter developer, you know pub.dev. This is the repository for, it's a package repository for Dart and Flutter apps. So if you build a library and you want to share it with others, you publish them here. And you can see a lot of packages here that it's available for people to use. So Flutter has, Google has created an AI toolkit, and it's called Flutter AI Toolkit here. And it's created by the Flutter team, I think. So it allows you to have the capability to allow you access Gemini in your Flutter apps. And before, they were separate packages. I think it was called Flutter Generative AI or something. So the docs is available here. So if you want to take a look, let's go 50. You can even try it in Firebase Studio. You can play around with it. Good thing with Flutter stuff is they always have good documentations for everything you want to do. You can even follow a code lab step by step and you get something running up. So this is one of the things we are going to use. So out of the box is support for one LLM provider integration, which is Firebase AI, which also includes your Gemini. And let's go into a bit of code. If we go to our prospect.yaml file, if in this case, as a Flutter developer, the prospect.yaml file is where you put all your dependencies into. So you can see that we have the Flutter AI toolkit here. And in this case, we are using version 0.9.2, which is the latest one. And important thing to add, you need to add Firebase Core as a package because it allows you to, you remember we bootstrapped the Firebase to this app. Yeah, it allows you to access Firebase. And then you need to add Firebase AI. Well, this AI toolkit gives you access to the UI that you need. You see that it has an LLM chat view. So that means you want to quickly add a chat view to your app, and this toolkit helps you to do that. But then this Firebase AI gives you total control of everything you need to use. If we go to the documentation, and you go to get started here, you can click on that Flutter. You can download the sample app, but really, we already went through this step to connect a Firebase project. We add our Firebase AI, and then we initialize Firebase in our main file. And now we are able to access Google AI by doing Firebase AI.GoogleAI.generative model, and you can pass in the model that you want. It's as simple as that. And you only need to compose a prompt, pass the prompt to generate content, and you will get your response in text. So it's really that simple. So for this one, we use Firebase AI mostly. But for this toolkit, if you want access to quick stuff, like you want to add a chat view, boom, you'll be able to do that quickly. Okay, so let's go through some of the examples that we have, and we need to think about how that helps us to powers our mobile app. So for the AI chat, same as every chat app you have, we tell the AI, tell me a joke, and yeah, why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Yeah, that's funny. And you can chat as well, give it any chat, and it's going to return stuff for you. Good stuff. Smart suggestions. So I also, as part of what I do in my free time, I also build these tiny apps that I put on the Play Store, and then I monetize with 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿. Let me just give 𝐷𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐿 allows you to add payments to your mobile app. So yeah, I'm just, so if you want to add subscription to your mobile app, 𝐉𝐞𝐭𝐩𝐚 is a good way to do that. So I have a couple of apps on the App Store that I use 𝐉𝐞𝐭𝐻 for. And one of the ways I power my app is, for example, I was working on an app where you can enter like a reminder of what you have done for that day. And this feature made a lot of sense for my user because it gives them quick suggestion. So let's say I write go for, you can see that it's giving me suggestions as I type. I actually have in my head, go for a walk, but AI has given me that suggestion. So it lets your user reduce the way they type. Go for a walk. And this is it. See, it gives me more suggestions. Go for a walk in the park. And as I click on it, it just loads them here. Go for a walk in the park. And the more text I build, the more suggestions it gives me. This is a good way to add that capability to your mobile app. So in the code, how does it work? I'll do a Control-T, and then I go to my AI service. So I have like an AI service, and I have an interface. Yeah, this interface allows me to mock this so that I can write a test for it. If you pull that GitHub repository, there are a lot of tests that I've written for this stuff. So what you're downloading is testable. But really, what we have done here is, let's go to let's see. Okay, so we have a method called summarize test here. And I have a method called get mode with prompts, which is where I initialize my I initialize a model. So the model I'm using is Gemini 2.0 Flash. And you can just pass in a system instruction here and then use content.system and passing like a prompt there. So how did we build up our prompt? I have these assets in my app, and they are markdown files. It's pretty good if you want to add context to whatever you are sending to Gemini. It's good to have like a markdown file that you can just pass to, instead of adding a bunch of text over in your code. You can just put your prompt in a markdown file and pass that to Gemini. It's really good. It's the same thing when you are vibe coding. One of the ways to get really good results with all this AI stuff is to have really good prompts. And I think careers will be made out of really good prompt engineers. So one way to write really good prompts is to put it in markdown files or sometimes plain text. I've seen conversation around how it's better that your prompt is in JSON, but there are a couple of research that I've seen that says, well, that's not true. AI is trained on a bunch of text, and they are really good with markdowns and text. So for me, I have my prompt in a .md file, which is a markdown file. And this is where I really imagine putting all this stuff in a string. You know, it's going to be hard, but a markdown file does the magic. And if you have vibe coding as well, you want AI to behave in a certain way. You put all your engineering stuff and the way you want it to behave. For example, yeah, so this IDE is actually Cursor, and it's not Visual Studio Code. And Cursor has one of the ways you can prompt the model to give you really good code. If you go to Cursor setting, and I think, is it rules? Yeah. Here, you can see that I've given my Cursor IDE a prompt here. Let's see. And what I've told it is, you are a senior Dart developer with experience in the Flutter framework. You know, Dart is just the programming language powering Flutter. So you can write backend services in Dart as well. So it was important to tell it that it's a senior Dart programmer, but it has experience in Flutter framework. In case I want to write a backend stuff, yeah. So generate code correction and refactoring that compiles with basic principles and nomenclature. You see, I gave it all the basic principles that I wanted. I gave it how I wanted to write code. I gave it how to write functions, even data, classes, how to follow solid principles, how you always handle exception, and how you always write tests. And then for Flutter specific stuff, I also told it the kind of pattern I want it to always do. So it's just an example of how good prompting helps you to sort of cage the behavior of the outputs that you're getting. And that's the same thing here. So for my Q&A assistant, for example, I told you that it's a Q&A assistant in providing accurate helpful answers to user questions, blah, blah, blah. And I told its knowledge areas. And I have this system prompt, which is general system prompt. And I told you that it should provide accurate, informative, and engaging responses. The accurate there might not be accurate, but yeah. And then the response format, I told you that it should use Markdown formatting for better readability, which means that any response that is going to give me back will likely be in Markdown formatting. And because now I can handle that data properly. If I want JSON, I will do the same prompting for it as well. For my translation prompts, see the way I gave it a prompt. You are a professional translation assistant, specialized in providing accurate natural translation between languages. And yeah, so there's a chance that it does a good job from this. Looking at it, what we've just done is we wrote our commands in a readable format for the AI, and then we fetch that prompt and we pass it to the model. And that's a way to get what you want from this stuff. And you can see that our smart suggestion sort of work. And let's check our translation. We want to translate good morning to Spanish. I'm not good in Spanish, but I assume it's correct. Yeah, it helps that you have this prompt there, and you might not need to start translating all your apps um, in um, in um, uh, in all the text in your apps. Okay, that also reminds me. That's why I was skipping. I also have a service called Translocal. Okay, so these service are built in Dart, and it's and this is also where I used the functionalities of AI Gemini in. So I have this. If I log in, you'll see one of the things I am offering is AI translation. So I discovered that, especially in my company, we service, in Canada, and we have two languages, and it's English and French. So when you are servicing your customers, you always need to think of English and French. So, but then we wanted to go to um, Europe, and then we had Spanish, we had other languages as well. So, but we needed a place where we can manage all this stuff. So that's why that brought me on the journey of the translocal.io, and it allows you to manage all your translations. There are other tools like that around, but mine is I wanted to build one that is powered by Dart, and that also but has first class support for Flutter. So that's the reason why I built this stuff. And you can see it has a dashboard where you can set your languages and stuff. But one thing I want you to look here is the import. You can import a language or languages. So let's say all your app, you have it in English, you can export those text and then import on this platform. But you don't know Spanish, German. But with AI translation, like the example I just showed you, just clicking on the button will translate that for you and put it here. And so let's say you want to translate from the welcome message from English to Spanish, you click the button, it translates, and it's available as a first class support in your Flutter apps. So if a user download from Spain or Mexico, they automatically see Spanish, and that allows you to have more client base than you have before. So these are ways that Gemini has helped improve things for people. And I know that specifically I was onboarding in the beta. One of the things they were asking is, does it have AI translation? I said, of course, yes, it does. But yeah, it's a paid feature. Yeah, so also text summary. Um, your user has a note and they want to, let's see, let's try it out. Let's copy this and put it here, and then we want to summarize it. Okay, so and you can see that it's really fast because number one, we have first class support for Gemini in here through Firebase. So we didn't, you can see that our installation was simple, and you just click on it and in milliseconds you have your results. Pretty good stuff, experience. And you can see the summary here, really good stuff. Again, let's look into some code. And let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of code here, but I wanted you to see is the same thing with our let's check our translation. It's the same thing. You make the model, you pass in the model, you pass the system instruction. Remember that we are getting our translation prompt from our Markdown file. Easy stuff, easy peasy. Okay, so let's move to sentiment analysis. Yeah, this one does analyze your mood, your sentiment, or let's say and this is really interesting in collecting feedback from users. So user experience stuff in your app and you're collecting feedback, but you want to store their sentiment instead of having to read everything they have written. You can just store the analysis in your backend and then pull based on the sentiment. You can add like a sentiment score and stuff like that. But instead of you to sit down and read everything your user is saying, you can just use Gemini to analyze what they're saying and then give it a sentiment score and then store that sentiment back in your backend. And you can filter by, okay, let's see how many user has a sentiment score of 1, and you can outreach to them and say stuff. Or as they enter this, whatever they say, you calculate the sentiment, you auto fire like an email responder, autoresponder to them. So, oh, we are sorry that you're feeling this way. Let's have a call and fix your issue. Okay, let's test this out. This app is really bad. So we analyze the sentiment. You can see it's really down. And our confidence is 70%. We can store this and say, oh, these are the users that doesn't have this. Okay, let's improve. Let's add some more text, and sometimes it is good. Yeah, it's neutral because it's saying, oh, it's bad, but sometimes it's good. We don't know where you belong, but yeah, you can see how and this stuff works. Let's give it, sometimes it is good. You see, it's the, the user is happy, it's 70%, but sometimes. So let's say it is good. And yeah, or let's say it is excellent. Let's see what this score gives us. Yeah, it still gives us 70, but yeah, you can tweak the whatever it gives you. But this is one of the ways you can improve your experience, improve experiences for users and stuff like that. And that brings me also to smart forms. And this one is more like the autocomplete, but you can make it pull some of your detail and the user's detail from the backend and autofill your form. So yeah, it's simple stuff and it works. And yeah, this QA assistant, we have a prompt for it, like I showed you the other time. But a trick to improving some of this stuff is something we call tool calling. And that is the next thing I want to talk about. And what do you mean by function or tool calling? So yeah, so function calling or tool calling is a capability that all these AI models gives you. Gemini also gives you that. And it allows the AI to decide when to delegate part of some tags to the function in your app. For example, let me show you an example here. So let's say function calling. So we have in the code, let's say we have a mock service here. We have a get user data, and it just randomly returns some user data for us. And we have all this user data. Okay. So, and this this stuff simulates like maybe your backend. You can expose some query to your user here that allows them to query your backend. But that's for your user. How do you make the AI query your backend, get some data from your backend, and use that to inform the user? And this is what is called tool and function calling. Like when maybe you are vibe coding, and sometimes your IDE is writing code. At some point, it wants to access your terminal. It wants to run some command. How does it know that it wants to access commands? It is where we talk about tool and function calling. And in this case, let's show you an example. I want to get user data for user 123. We are calling Gemini here, and you can see it says I have retrieved the user data for user 123. The username is John Doe. Are we correct? Yep, John Doe from New York, and their email is this stuff. See, the user is from New York. This is their email. Their preference are English language, dark theme, and notifications enabled. They have a premium subscription plan that expires this. Really, it got all that information from this. And what we've just done is we just told Gemini this stuff. But how does it work under the hood? That takes me to these let's see. Call with functions. Yeah, that takes me to this stuff. Okay, so Firebase has a way you can pass in a tool to this stuff. And it's in the tools option. So what is does the documentation tell us? It says we can create a generative model. Wait, it doesn't say. The mode can be a model name or a model name code. Yeah, it doesn't explain it, but let me explain how it works. You can pass in a list of tools to your model, and Gemini will figure out which tool to call. I think you can pass in as much as 150 tools. I can't remember how many. It's likely in their docs. And they have a detailed doc about this. Let me see. Function calling. Let me just put the link here. And yeah, they have a detailed stuff on how it works. And they have a nice image here. So you as the user, you prompt your application, and then it prompts the model. Then the model identify based on the parameters in the prompt. It does a function call. So the function call can be to an API. In our case, it's the get user data, and then it returns the response from that API. And then it takes that response to Gemini back, and Gemini formats it in the way it wants, and then gives you back that response. Really, that's function calling. And in a lot of ways, it's really cool because, for example, when you're vibe coding, maybe you're working with a database, AI can make changes to that database if you give it permission. You can call your terminal and stuff like that. You can add that functionality in your app. For example, if I coded this, that the user can change the theme of this app via natural language, they can just write, I want to change this theme to green, and it will call like a function in the app that changes the theme. It's really that simple. But there's a way you need to format your tool call. You can read all that up in the documentation. We don't have that much time. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is grounding. And this is a way you tell Gemini to access real-time web search. So Gemini's knowledge is capped and it doesn't have default access to the internet. But if you want real-time web capability, this is allows it to have access to Google search. So what are the current stock prices for Apple? Let's see. Yeah, this one takes a bit of time because it has to do a Google search. And you can see it gives you all the information. So that way, your model can have access to latest Google search stuff. And how do you do grounding? Let's go to grounding screen. Let's enter here. Yeah, so it's easy. You just create your generative model, passing the model, and in the tool, you can just say tool.google search, and that's all. So it passes your prompt to Google search and gets the result, then formats back your response. And yeah, so we've looked at all the demo features. We couldn't get to the architecture, but you can pull the code base and see stuff. So now best practices. Yeah, secure API keys with Flutter storage. Now we are not using API keys, so that's why I put a question mark here. But there are other packages in Flutter, so if you ever use it, should you store your API key on your mobile? No. Even this secure storage, the thing that it helps you with is you can encode that, but as long as people can decompile your app, I will never suggest that you put your API key. You can put it on a service called the service and stuff. Or if you're ever going to use API keys, you can make sure to prevent abuse using app check. If you go here, you can see that you can register your app for app check. You can look into how that works. Now, another best practice is to have a remote config for your prompt. Our prompt is on our mobile, and when you compile your app, you won't be able to change it. But it makes sense to put this on a service such that if you want to fine-tune how the model gives you back your response, you can just do it remotely and stuff. So handle errors and rate limits gracefully. At some points, you might run into errors and rate limits. Handle them. Yeah, so you cache frequent prompts. We already are using like a markdown for it. So if a user is entering as much prompt as you want, and you can detect that and save that. Yeah, optimize prompt size, mark tokens, temperature. So if you have questions, here's the time to discuss them. But if you're interested, just go to the repository. It has all the things I talk about. Look at how it's done. And I think you'll be in a good place. Thank you for listening.
Hey, that's a great session, Temi. Thanks for sharing with us your
Thank you.
expertise.
Thank you.
Anyone who has questions for Temi? No? Oh, okay. Nino has a question for you. How do you validate or assert the quality of AI responses during testing?
Honestly, if I'm going to build an app here, you can't. Well, Gemini is giving you stuff, so you can't really validate anything unless you want to look through the response first. Actually, there is an option in the model where you can set like a safety setting. You can use that to filter maybe bad stuff before it even gets to Gemini or from the response coming back. But if I was to build like a normal app, I'll put most of these AI features on like a service, and then probably I have external third-party services that will look through, validate the responses before it gets to the user. But yeah, that's one of the ways you can do stuff.
Sounds fair. Well, Temi, thank you so much for this
Thank you.
session. I hope you enjoy the rest of your summer. And before wrapping up, I want to invite you to follow us on our social media contacts. We are on LinkedIn, is the link that you see in this slide. Also on Twitter at GDG underscore Edmonton. On Instagram, gdg.edmonton. Also, I'm sharing a link and the QR code for our Discord server, so you can share with us anything you want and to follow our upcoming events. And thanks for joining us today. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day and also have an awesome summer. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.